You ever look at different spiritual traditions and think, wait a second, these seem to contradict each other. How can one truth be right if it cancels out another? Well, today we are diving into a really profound text that tackles that exact problem. Its name alone tells you how ambitious it is. Sarva Siddhanta Samanvaya, or the synthesis of all doctrines. So here's our game plan. We're going to start with the universe of ideas that were floating around. Then we'll jump right in to the great debates that really defined Indian philosophy. After that, we'll see how this text tries to reconcile all the contradictions, what its actual path of synthesis looks like, and finally, we'll land on this beautiful conclusion, one truth, many paths. All right, first up, a universe of ideas. I want you to just imagine a place buzzing with thousands of years of really deep philosophical thought. That was ancient India. It was vibrant, for sure, but also pretty confusing with all these competing ideas. It was a genuine philosophical puzzle. And at the absolute heart of that puzzle were these massive questions, the kind people spent centuries wrestling with. Like, is the ultimate reality some kind of personal God that you can actually pray to? Or is it more of a formless cosmic energy that's just everywhere? And what about this world we live in? Is it real, or is it all just a grand illusion? Kind of like a dream that's hiding a deeper truth. Now, the key that helps us unlock this whole puzzle comes from this incredible work right here. This is Swami Karpātrī Ji's Sarva Siddhanta Samanvaya. This is going to be our guide, and honestly, it's a total masterclass in finding harmony where most people just saw conflict. So, to really appreciate the solution this text offers, we have to understand the scale of the problem. This whole philosophical world was really defined by these huge debates, a real clash of foundational ideas about, well, everything. And this slide gets right to the core of it. On one side, you've got Advaita, or non-dualism. The argument here is that there's only one ultimate thing in existence, this formless reality called Brahman. Everything else, you, me, the entire world, is ultimately an illusion. Then on the other side, you have Vishishtadvaita, or qualified non-dualism. This view says, okay, reality is one, but it has real, distinct parts. God is a personal being, and the world is his very real creation. So you can see the problem here. And this just shows you the sheer depth of what the author was dealing with. This book isn't just a summary. It dives deep into all the complex arguments from every side. It's like a whole universe of different viewpoints is packed between its covers. Which brings us to the million-dollar question, doesn't it? I mean, if one school of thought is saying the world is an illusion, and another is saying it's totally real, how can they both be right? How is it possible for these completely opposing views to all be true? This is where the real genius of this work starts to shine. The author doesn't just pick a side and say, this one's right. Nope. Instead, he offers us a kind of master key, a way to reconcile things that seem impossible to reconcile. And that master key is a concept called Samanvaya. It's a Sanskrit word, and it basically means harmony, or synthesis, or putting things together in the right way. The core idea here is that you don't have to throw one truth out to accept another. Instead, you can resolve the contradictions by understanding their proper context and how they relate to each other. The text gives this beautiful analogy to make it all click. Think about gold. Is gold a ring, a necklace, a coin? Well, it can be all of those things, right? The forms are totally different. They serve different purposes, but the underlying substance, the gold itself, is one and the same. Okay, so how does this actually work in practice? Samanvaya isn't just a nice thought, it's a whole systematic method for building a unified vision out of all these diverse ideas. The method really unfolds in three main steps. First, you have to acknowledge that there are different levels of truth. There's the ultimate, absolute reality, and then there's the reality that we experience day to day. Second, you start to see the many, all the different gods or concepts, not as competing entities, but as different aspects or expressions of that one single being. And third, you put the scriptures into context, realizing that different texts are aimed at people at different stages of their spiritual journey. So let's take that big debate about God's nature. Using this method of Samanvaya, we can see Nirguna Brahman, the formless absolute God, as the ultimate truth. That's the gold itself. And Sakana Brahman, the personal God with form, is that same reality just experienced from a different level. That's the ring or the necklace, see? They're not two different gods, they're just two different ways of looking at the one single reality. And this isn't just some philosophical hand-waving. The author really does the hard work. The text is packed with meticulous analysis, realigning specific passages from different scriptures, showing how, when you read them in the right context, their descriptions of different gods all point back to the very same ultimate truth. So, what's the point of all this heavy intellectual lifting? Why does creating this big synthesis even matter? Well, it's about something much bigger than just settling old philosophical arguments. There's a quote that just perfectly captures the whole vision. Just as the ocean appears as countless waves, so the one indivisible reality appears as the myriad forms of the universe. The forms are many, but the substance is one. The waves are real, you can see them, but they are never, ever separate from the ocean itself. So, what are the big takeaways here? What should you walk away with? First, something that looks like a flat-out contradiction might just be a difference in perspective. Second, real unity isn't always on the surface. You often have to look deeper for an underlying principle that connects things. And finally, and this is a big one, it suggests that different paths, whether they're spiritual or philosophical, can all lead to the same destination. And that kind of leaves us with a final thought, doesn't it? If some of the biggest philosophical contradictions in history can be resolved just by shifting perspective, what arguments or puzzles in our own lives could we see in a completely new light? Something to think about.